Okay, we're recording, and I'm with Amy Suthon. Suthon? Am I saying that right?
Nothing. Yep.
Suthon. Okay. Thanks for correcting me, or affirming my non-need to be corrected. I don't know. Uh, all
Yeah, you
right.
did a good job.
Thanks. Just leave it right there and not touch it again. Um, yeah. So talk to me about where you are in your author journey.
Well, I have been writing for a long time. I always wanted to write, of course, just seems like that's the thing. And out of college, though, I did a lot of technical writing. So I've done mostly engineering and kind of business plans. And then always on the side, I've dabbled with fiction and mostly
Okay.
short stories. In fact, I got an award earlier this year for a short story,
Hey,
but I'm
congratulations.
trying to transition to novels. And so for about the last 2 to 3 years, I've been working on novels. And the first novel that I worked on, I kind of treated like a short story. And it was a terrible plan because it was basically I pantsed it. I didn't have a
It's good.
plot, because it was like I took the mentality of, oh, I know the beginning and I know the end. How hard can it be, right?
Yeah.
And it didn't go well. so I'm now like on the opposite end of the pendulum, and that's what you'll see is that so I'm trying to be more deliberate
Hardcore
in my
planning and
plotting
plotting, and yeah.
and making sure that it's actually going to work instead
Okay.
of winging it.
Where is this novel at now? Like, talk to me about where you are in the process.
I am in the process. I've finished my plot as far
Okay.
as the outline. I've dug into the character voices for my main characters, and I'm trying to work through it. I'm kind of on the fence on whether I need to go to the next level with each of the scenes, building
Okay.
it, um,
Like
scene by
outlining
scene.
it. Yeah.
Right, like
Yeah.
more detailed of what the conflicts are to make sure I'm hitting all the right
Okay.
arcs on the journey. And that's part of that with the making sure I have the right character cast is what I want to talk about today, because I'm
Okay.
not sure with the scenes that I've outlined, if I don't put the characters in the right positions, that I'll get where I want to go, if you know
Yeah.
what I mean.
Yeah, no, that's great. So, awesome. That's fun. Let's talk about your cast then. You'd email me that this is going to be a love triangle. Are you still going toward love triangle?
Well, I've thought about it, and I kind of paired the love. It still has elements of a love triangle, but I decided the main story, the main arc that I want is to follow the heroine into a self-discovery, or the heroine's journey. Or it's not really, it's more like that's what I was saying, the virgin's promise of self-discovery.
Okay.
So I kind of envision it like a cross between Mulan and maybe a little bit of Bridget Jones. But
Okay.
I don't think I I'd originally thought it was going to be a love story, but as I've gone through it, the thing that matters the most to me is the the main character having a satisfying arc of self-discovery and empowerment by the end.
Okay. So Allie is going to have an arc of self-discovery and empowerment.
Right.
Okay. That's great. I'm going to pull up a whiteboard just so we can work together as we talk through your cast. You sent me a ton of spreadsheets and they're awesome. I read through all of them. They're really great, but they're tough to just like write in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
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 So I'm just gonna pull up a random whiteboard, especially the ones I made, because if you like move that, like you noted, if you move the tabs around, there's no there's no telling what's gonna happen to that
But it
that
was really
spreadsheet.
cool when it works.
Yeah, when it works, it's great. When it doesn't work, it's a mess. I've actually talked to somebody about like, hey, we should like build a program for this, but who has money or time for that? All right, I'm gonna share my screen. So what we're gonna do to build a cast, is Allie your only vehicle character? Meaning, is she the only character that you are in the head of, or do you have other vehicle characters?
No, my intent is that she would be the one.
Okay, so that's nice. That makes it easier. So we've got Allie as your vehicle character. Um, Tell me about who Allie is at the start of the story.
At the beginning of the story, she is the princess of the realm. She's the youngest. She has four older sisters, and basically they've all been married off to benefit the kingdom.
Okay.
And so her father's looking to marry her off to find, something advantageous for the benefit of the patriarchy, so to
Okay.
speak. And so that's her situation, but she's not happy with it. Obviously, she's got some creepy guy that's potentially her future husband,
Okay.
and she's insecure. She doesn't feel confident enough to say, no, I'm not doing this, or to step outside of the expectations of her situation.
Okay. So not confident enough to express her wishes.
Right.
What is she insecure about?
She is, I think it's like she feels like she doesn't have the right or is in a position to disagree with the way things are always done,
Okay.
even
So
though
she's
it
kind of
affects her
duty
life
bound.
pretty intimately. Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right.
Um, what else about her? Like, how would Kip describe her at a party? They were at a party together. What's Allie doing?
That she's just kind of goofy. Like she tries to be cool, but she's not. She's just, she wants to go along with everybody else, but she's a kind of step into her own beat. Like she has her own ideas about how things should be done, but she doesn't want to go against the grain.
Okay. So she's opinionated, you're saying, but she doubts those opinions.
Right.
Okay. What do you mean when you say goofy?
I mean, she she has a sense of humor, that she's looking at the absurdity of some of the things going on, that she's able to laugh at the situation, but at the same time she kind of like messes up whatever she's supposed to be doing in the situation, because she's somewhere, her head's kind of in the clouds, or she's not concentrating on that because she's got these dreams in her head that she's always read the stories of the legends of old, so somehow she thinks she's gonna, and it's funny because of course it's a fantasy novel, but she's going to magically figure out how to go be something amazing, so no one will ever force her into these situations again. So she's kind of always thinking
Gotcha.
of like her escape, or
Okay.
how she can do something else.
Yeah. So she's constantly got kind of a dreamer in the head. It makes her a little goofy, a little clumsy. She like people, or is she really shy?
She is pretty shy.
Okay. Okay. Um, anything else about her personality that you think we should know?
um no, no, I think
Okay.
that's
So that's Allie at the start of the story. Let's talk about Allie at the end of the story.
okay.
How's Allie going to grow?
So Allie is going to be able to speak up for herself, and to, the main gist is that she's going to be able to accept that maybe she is goofy, by the terms of the kingdom, for wanting these things, or however she sees the world, but that it's okay, and that she is pretty awesome the way she is.
Okay.
So she's able to stand up for herself, and she's able to come into her powers, which of course also represented magically.
Gotcha. So, able to speak her mind. How does she feel about that duty that she once was kind of bound by?
She feels like there's another way to fulfill her duty. She feels like that being a piece of property to be bartered is not the only value that she has.
Okay.
I think that's where she's searching.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. Okay, so we really have her kind of gaining confidence through the
Right.
story. Okay. Oh, that's driving me crazy. There we go. So the reason I asked that of you is because when we're building her cast, her growth arc, what she's gaining, losing from the start of the story to the end of the story, We want characters that are going to have a positive impact on her and characters that are going to have a negative impact on her. Does that make sense?
Right.
Specifically on her growth. So when we're kind of building her cast, we want to make sure that the cast is diverse, that you have a unique palette of voices, but that also the cast is strategic, and then it's going to help you like fill out, help you empower her to grow or change. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Um, there's kind of two ways we could go. We could go into building her voice, or we could go into just looking at the cast. Which way would be more helpful?
I'd like to go into the cast.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay.
Yeah.
So you've got cast members that she encounters from the beginning. You've got Kip. Like I'm thinking of her main cast members. Kip, Rivner. Did I spell that right? Rivner. Okay.
Right.
Um,
Jana.
Jana, Kay. There was a Claire,
Yeah. Clarina, I think.
Lorena. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other major cast members that are important to talk about with her?
The king, her father.
Okay. Father.
Yeah. And then I also have like a mentor, and I don't know if I'm using too many crazy, like I'm mixing too much archetypes in there, but I gave a guy named Martel. He's the arms master who kind of takes her under his wing to help her grow.
Perfect. Okay. That's great. Um, Talk to me about the role. Which of these characters do you feel you have the biggest grasp on? You're like, I know that character already.
Mm, Probably Rivner because I worked on him the
Riveting.
longest before
Nice. All right.
with Allie. Yeah, because he was the intention. Originally, it was going to be a love story, enemies to lovers. So I had set him up to have. He's kind of arrogant. He's got a lot of confidence, and he's a seasoned warrior. So he knows a lot of. Um, he has confidence, and he knows a lot about the skills that Allie wants to attain.
Okay.
And that's how they kind of butt heads too, because he's just like, "You're terrible."
What is his opinion of her place in culture?
He is somewhat sympathetic, because the thing about Rivner is that he has some fire magic heritage, which is kind of like the frowned upon caste in this realm.
Gotcha.
So he's been treated as an outsider since he was little. So it gives him a little bit of sympathy, but in general, he's all into the hierarchy of the way things are done,
Okay. So
if that makes sense.
it does. You kind of picked a middle ground on me there at the end, which is I'm gonna make you go one way or the other.
Okay.
Is he the outsider who's like, um, hey, I'm your rival. I'm standing against you, but not because you're a woman and shouldn't be doing what you're doing, simply because we have opposing views? Or is he like, look, I understand that you have these desires to rise above your station, but get back in your place?
So the thing with Rivner is he doesn't know that Allie is in costume. So
Yeah.
so in the beginning of the story, he doesn't know that. So he kind of accepts her as an equal. And
Okay.
that's how they butt heads, that they don't know. And when she reveals herself, and that's what I was telling you before, he's totally not okay with it because he's like, dude, I would get in so much trouble if I go take the princess out into battle and nobody told me this. Like, I have zero desire to be that guy.
How far in the book does she reveal herself to him?
It is at the beginning of the third act, so
Okay,
he
it's pretty
finds
late in
out
the
when
book.
everybody else finds out. So that's the drama that he basically drops her.
Gotcha.
They're going to be partners, and then he drops her and she's stuck kicked out. And
So the reason I asked that is because whether he's encouraging to her character growth or discouraging to her character growth depends on where he is while she's growing. Does that make sense? So at the
yeah.
point that she's already decided, I'm gonna be confident and come out, his impact on her is less important. Does that make sense?
Right.
Yeah. So I'm gonna qualify him as an engine. Have you heard me talk about vehicles, engines, anchors, and hazards?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm gonna qualify him as an engine because he accepts her as an equal when he first meets her. That's gonna
Right.
help her build that confidence. Does that make sense?
Yes. He butts heads with her the whole time. Yes.
Yeah. But that's okay. Like you know, butting heads with her has to do with her being shy and him being arrogant and confident,
Right.
right? So there's a demonstration of who he is that,
He challenges her to grow. I agree.
yeah,
He's an
yeah,
engine.
he's who
Yeah.
she wants to be, right?
Yep.
Like he's
He is.
confident, he's strong, he's an outsider. Like this is her prototype,
Yep.
right?
I agree. Yeah. That's a good way to
Yeah.
put it.
And when in the end, when he rejects her, he's like, I don't want to get in trouble for this. She's not going to care because by that point,
Nope. She doesn't care. You're right.
she's
Doesn't
already
matter.
on.
Well, she does, but I mean, she's kind of sad. Like she thought she
Yeah.
could
I mean,
count,
she cares, but she's not
right?
like, this isn't going to stop her at
She's
this.
not going to turn back, right?
Yeah. Um, who else is a character now? These two are good. Just to let you know kind of what my thoughts are on your characters. These are great. They sound different. He's arrogant and confident, and skilled. So he's going to use language that demonstrates knowledge, right? When you talk about his voice, the words he chooses, the language he's going to use are going to demonstrate that he has this knowledge. He's going to speak his opinions confidently, like he's just going to say what he feels when he feels it.
Yeah.
He's not going to hold back his opinions on decisions they're making. He's going to tell everyone like where he thinks he's going to go.
Yes.
Um, Not a lot of questions from him, lots of sentences with periods at the end. Uh, one to two sentences at a time because he doesn't need to justify what he feels. He doesn't need explanations. He can just say it and he's fine with that. He's
Exactly.
also going to be very participatory in conversations. So, not a lot of silent body language from him in a conversation of like even two characters, but three or more characters. He talks a lot. Like he doesn't have a problem sharing who he is. Um, that's where you're going to get them butting heads because her voice, she's gonna talk over herself a lot. She's gonna over explain things. That's that like pretty shy, self-consciousness coming out. um she's gonna have flights of fancy sometimes, which is her kind of like dreamer, I wish things were different. So their personalities are going to clash with each other,
Right.
but she's gonna see in him who she wants to become.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, give me another one.
So Kip is then the next person that I worked on the most, and he was when I told you at the end that Rivner kind of dumps her. So it was
Yeah.
originally going to be an enemies to lovers, and then I was like, I got to like kind of think all through it, and then I was like, well, no, Rivner's not going to be okay at the end. He's not going to be like, all right, never mind, let's get
Yeah.
together.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's going to take him a bit to get over it,
Yeah.
and then, but Kip is from Aquitania, and he is, I think of him like the Harrison Ford in Star Wars.
Okay.
He's the rogue. He's the lovable rogue. So his father is the king of the mafia king in
Okay.
the Water Kingdom, who's allied with Allie's father. But the mafia, of course, is trying to work all the angles. So Kip has been sent. He was arrested, and his dad kind of tricked him into being sent out there as the spy.
Okay.
So and of course Allie doesn't know that. He's got this alternate agenda where he's yes, charming, cynical, confident. He's like he really is kind of playing all the sides so he can see where things go. But I think what happens with him is, so as water is reflective, and it can change the way things look. He provides her with the glamour that allows her to do the training.
Okay.
So he's on the inside of her secret, and he also, almost as a lark, is helping her so she can pass as a warrior, because he's like, oh my god, you walk wrong. You just like, you're so not capable. Yeah, so he
Okay.
kind of takes her, he also kind of takes her under the wing to help her develop, but more as an ally, where she butts heads with Rivner, and she doesn't really think a lot of him other than he's helpful, until later on in the story.
Is he infatuated with her?
I think, yeah, he starts to, and that's where he gets tormented. And I'm not going to put it in this book just because I think it's too much of a storyline, that he ends up really on his own hero's journey because he's left his father, he's left the kingdom, and he's basically kind of falls in love with Allie. And so he's helping her, and
Okay.
nobody knows it.
What's his desired outcome for her? Does he see this as her new life, or does he see this as like the princess on a vacation
No,
until
I
she
think
marries him and settles down?
no, I think I don't know that he thinks about it. I actually wrote one of your exercises where it was, I had Kip and Jana butting heads. And it's funny because I had Kip, he started like, his motive was that you shouldn't be trapped by your family into a certain position. And that's him talking about himself, but that's how he defends Allie, that he
Okay.
believes, you should be allowed to make your own choices. So he's, and it's through his lens of his life that he sees, I don't have to be my dad's boy. I don't know
Okay.
how else to put guy, his mafia guy, so he wants for himself kind of the same thing, to be able to say, I'm not doing this, because that's how he becomes conflicted, but he's not able to either. So, but that's his, if does that answer the question?
It does answer the question. Doesn't solve your problem, but it answers your question. So it answers my question. Your problem of not having enough conflict. So,
That's my way. See,
so
yeah,
let's talk about his relationship with Allie and how they're going to work in a scene. He's going to come off as as Rivner comes off as a rival to Allie, as like um someone she looks up to, a prototype of who she wants to be, but they butt heads a lot. Kip is going to feel like an older brother.
yes,
Uh, Part of that is he's charming and confident, and she's goofy and shy and a dreamer. She doesn't quite have herself pulled together. So it's going to feel like he's always taking care of her. Does that make
right,
sense?
yeah,
Um, that's fine. Like, so conversations between Allie and Kip are going to be great.
yeah. She acts different with Kip. She has a different voice with Kip because
Yeah,
she's
she should be more relaxed with Kip. She should be a little more vulnerable. She should actually, the shyness should go away a little bit.
right,
With both Kip and River, we should see her confidence come out
yeah,
in different ways. With Kip, you want her confidence to come out in vulnerability and like in sharing what she actually feels. With Rivner, you want her confidence to come out in a more competitive sense, where they're
okay.
like coming at each other. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, to get her to step up. Yep.
Yeah. I'm glad you've pulled the love triangle out. This would be a bad love triangle because they're both good options. What
Right.
you want for a love triangle is an option that is safe but a bad choice, and an option that's dangerous but a good choice. So
Okay.
Rivner's a good candidate for a love triangle. He's dangerous in that their personalities conflict, but he makes her better. So he ends up being a good choice. The problem, if you wanted this to be a love triangle, Kip needs to see her as on vacation and someday going back to her princessness.
Mm,
He would need to be an anchor. He could still have the charming, confident big brother thing with her, and he could still help her have this little like stray from where she's going, but he needs to constantly be like, but look, this isn't you. He needs to see her as like the little sister he has to care for. The way you're
okay.
describing him right now, he sees the potential in her and is kind of big brothering that into existence. So
Right.
if you wanted the love triangle between these three characters, you'd have to make him an anchor. Does that make
Okay.
sense? I'm not
Yeah.
saying do that. I'm just saying that because that's a way you were thinking before. You'd have to
Right.
change his his cynicism wouldn't just apply to the world, it would also apply to her ability to do this.
Okay,
The story would be like, hey, you're just out here kind of playing around, and at some point we're going back to the castle,
I got
right?
you.
And
Yeah.
about the midpoint, he'd probably be like, okay, this was fun, but we're done. Time to go back to the castle. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah, and that's
that
how
makes
this
sense.
would work, is that's when you'd start to see the love triangle of like, oh, maybe. And so he would push her to be like, maybe he's right. Maybe I need to give this up. Maybe it is just, I just need to go back. Does that make
Right.
sense? That's how the
Yeah,
love
yeah.
triangle would work. But so
Okay.
who is her? Talk to
Well,
me. Give me the next character. Let's
okay,
just
so
keep
the
going.
next, so this is where I actually came kind of to the same conclusion. Like I told you, I realized I had a problem. So then I had originally had Jana as kind of the family. She's her cousin, and Jana's also a healer. She's got healer magic. So, and she's on the inside of Allie's secret. But I made her the anchor, and that's where I in the the writing exercise, she was the anchor and Kip was the engine. And
Okay.
she keeps saying, you're so lucky you're a princess. You shouldn't be doing this. You need to act appropriately and get to your maidenly duties. You're getting hurt, like look at you, you're injured. This is not the way it's supposed to be.
Gotcha.
And that was her big argument, that you need to get with the plan here, like it's
Okay.
not that bad. You're
Talk
really
to me.
lucky.
Talk to me about her personality a little bit.
So I had originally thought of her as like this really bubbly, kind of free spirited person because she's got the healer magic and she's just kind of easygoing. But I think I'm going to have to make her a little less easygoing because I think she's very, or I don't know, she feels very much that this is the way it's supposed to be, and you should not, you're playing with fire and you're going to get in trouble. And this is, stop doing this.
Yeah, I hear you kind of drifting her voice into her role. It doesn't have to be that way.
It doesn't. Okay.
There is a prototype, or there is a trope character in these kind of stories that you're missing, which is the stern, hard-nosed friend. That's like, I'm here to protect you because you're being a dumbass, right? Like you are missing that voice. You can have the bubbly, giggly, um, somewhat absent-minded character. She's gonna be the character that like Allie laughs with a lot.
Uh-huh.
She's gonna be the like best friend, and it's fine for that character to also be like, no, this is wrong. Does that make sense? And it's
Yeah.
actually a nice trope because there needs to be some innocence to it if you want to keep this character. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
So originally, yeah. I had originally got her because I wanted her to be able to talk about the guys, like have a
100%.
female friend. And that was the idea, that she could be like, oh, did you see these guys? They're super hot, and then and Allie's like, no, I don't care about that. I'm trying to go do something else. And
Yeah, that's the like, if you keep the bubbly, giggly, kind of klutzy
uh-huh.
character, she's gonna be Allie's best friend. They're gonna be
Okay.
attached at the hip.
That was how I originally thought they were best friends. They would giggle and gossip and
Yeah, they're
always
tight.
come together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're always together. She's gonna be having her infatuated with the two guys, with Rivner and Kip, is great. Um, because it gives her a reason for them to go on this little excursion. But
Right.
like I was saying earlier, like with Kip, where he'd have a turn where he's like, all right, this is done. She needs to have the same, like, wait, what are you doing? Like, what's going on? And that's a phrase, like, if you keep Jana this way, when you build her voice, that's a phrase I'd give her. Wait, what? Wait, what? Like, as if she's always being
Uh-huh.
left out of conversations. Like when somebody says, like, okay, we're gonna go over here, she's like, wait, what?
Right.
We're gonna go over here to do this thing. Oh, okay. What were you like? Where were you when we were just having the conversation?
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
don't know. I was right here, right? Like that's kind of how you want her. You want to give her that like innocence. I put klutzy, but it's not klutzy. It's this like um naive
Yeah.
voice that you're missing from your cast right now, right?
Okay.
Because Allie, while she's goofy and she's a dreamer, she's not naive. Like she's
No,
not bubbly, but they
no.
kind of live in that same sphere. It's why they're friends. It's almost like when you create Jana, this is the childhood friend she's outgrowing.
Yes. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
That you got it. That's right.
Um, which is a great anchor. Jana's a great anchor. The
Okay.
problem is we need another friend
Okay.
here who is going to be the stern one.
The stern one. Okay.
Does that exist? Talk to me. Who is
Well, that could be Clarina.
Clarina?
There was Clarina and Gwenna was like the childhood rival. And
Okay.
so she's just jealous because she's a very negative person, and so she's always trying to one up Allie. But I didn't really create anything for Clarina as far as what I thought about her yet. I just thought she
Yeah,
needed a friend.
if
She
you
could be a
if you
friend.
think about the world before, like before the journey,
Right.
what you need is two friends with Allie, both
Okay.
female, who they're all three kind of inseparable, have been for a long time. Jenna is the bubbly, giggly, naive one.
Hmm.
Allie is the dreamer, and then you need the serious one.
Okay.
And
That would
you're
definitely be Clarina. That
okay.
was,
Because right now you're missing the serious one. And that's a common kind of friend. I'm trying to think of a good example. Three Musketeers is the classic example. Athos, Porthos, and Aramis, right? Like you've got the very serious one who takes his religious devotion very serious. You've got the Joker kind of cad, and then you've got the kind of dumb one, right? Like so
yeah.
that's kind of how they line up. And I say that affectionately, but
Right.
and then Kip is the guy that's kind of floated around the three of them that they've all grown up with, that they're all somewhat infatuated with, although they may not ever confess it outside of the three of them. Does that make
But
sense?
yes, but Kip's a new guy. But yeah, I would see them all.
Yeah, but when he comes around, it's
He's
like,
magnetic.
oh yeah, look at this guy. And like, we could all jump in with this guy and like, he's mine, or no, he's mine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jenna's like, maybe I have a shot. And Clarina needs to be like, you've never had a shot. Like it's that kind of,
Yeah.
yeah. So to fill out the Clarina, like if you want to use Clarina as that character, you need her to be sharp, a little cutting, um, grounded. I'm avoiding the word serious because you don't need her to be serious. You just need her to be like focused. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Um, and at this, it's sharing that like duty bound aspect of her voice with Allie. So
Right.
when you're
Okay.
talking about friends, oh, a great book that has these three friend types. How did I not think of that about that? Is The Hate You Give. Star
Okay.
has two friends at school. I can't remember their names. One of them is the serious one-liner cynic, like one-liner kind of almost mean girl, but her and Star are friends, so it's fine.
Hmm.
And then the other one is kind of more bubbly and can't we all just get along? And Star is the glue between the two of them,
That
right?
makes sense. Yeah.
That's what you're looking for here. Is like Clarina probably wouldn't hang out with Jana if
No.
Allie wasn't around, right?
Right.
Yeah. Um, you need Clarina to also say like you want her kind of against this from the start. but there to protect. Does that make sense?
Yes,
And that's kind of
totally.
the voice you're missing in your conflict, is this strong voice of this is a bad idea. Because Kip is all for it, and Jana is for it until she's not. Until
Yeah.
it gets dangerous, and then Jana's like, I'm not for it anymore.
Yeah, no.
But she
Exactly.
was never for it for the right reasons. She was never for it to help Allie find who she is. She's for it because Kip's hot and this sounds fun, right? Like,
Right.
let's do it. Clarina has to always be against it.
Okay, got it.
Like, I don't want it. Now, if you really want to have a big emotional swing in the end, Clarina's the anchor who comes to her and is like, I don't agree, but if this is really what you want, right? Because an
Mhm.
anchor can serve as an anchor through the whole plot, and then at the end be like, I approve of you completely ignoring me. Does that make sense?
Yes, I hadn't thought of
Yeah,
that. I thought if anything, on her downward slope, that's Clarine is going to be another nail in the coffin of, you know,
definitely
making
another nail in the coffin, all the way down. But at the dark night of the soul, it's an Act 4 thing, like end of Act 3 thing.
uh-huh.
After the victory's been met, when you show like the new world, you can have a nice moment with Clarina where she's like, "Hey, I'm sorry." Especially
Got
if
it.
you want to redeem her for a book 2.
Yeah,
If you want to redeem Clarina and Jana for a book 2, then at the end they have a moment where they're like, "I was wrong. You were right.
right.
Look at what you've become." Type moment. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that'll be cool. Yeah.
Okay. Here you've got two. So if we were to say kind of like weak and strong anchors and engines, Rivner's a pretty weak engine because he's a prototype, but he's fighting with her. Kip is a pretty strong engine.
Right.
He's behind her all the way. These are very strong anchors. So now when you have these characters in conversation, you've got solid conflict. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm assuming her father's an anchor.
Yes, definitely.
He's
He's
probably
the
not in a lot of scenes though, is he?
No, he's more the antagonist as, on the different kind of he represents the institution, the patriarchy
Yeah.
that's kind of the nebulous enemy. He's the
Yeah.
guy. He's the face.
Yeah. And he's more an idea than an actual character.
Right.
Like we'll see him.
He will interact and be like, put my foot down. No, you will not be doing this,
Yeah.
you know.
How else would you describe him?
I think it's he believes he's duty bound. He believes strongly that he loves his daughter and that he knows what's best for her, and it's to do what he tells her.
Gotcha.
So I don't want to make him unloving. I think he does it, like all good bad guys. He does it because he thinks it's the right thing to do, and
Yeah.
he's, you
Yeah.
know,
And he doesn't have to be like, you don't even need to think of him as a bad guy. He's just kind of the old school voice. And
yeah,
really, what's interesting about characters like this that appear a couple times and then become more an idea than an actual character, um, is it's more about how Allie perceives him than who he really is. Does that make sense?
it does. And I was going to ask you, so, and my original thought was that she wants to prove herself to her dad. And that's kind of
Absolutely.
one of the things that's driving her from the beginning is that he just doesn't see me. I'm different and he's
Yeah.
not seeing who I am. And that's so at the end, she wants him to acknowledge her.
Yeah, and that's another way. Like, if you don't do the Jana Clarita acknowledgement at the end, you can do the father acknowledgement at the end. It'll have the
Yeah.
same emotional impact. It'll burn. It just depends on what characters you want to carry over to the next book. If you want to carry Jana and Clarina over into a book two, you have to redeem them at the end of the story. If you're
Mhm.
fine to burn them, and in book two we don't see them again, then have the affirmation moment with the father. Does that make
Got it.
sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm gonna put him over here because he's not really part of the gang.
Yeah. He's not going to be a
Yeah. Is
chatting
Rivner
with
part
her.
of the gang, or does he just show up?
Rivner is an outsider. He shows up for the King's Championship. He
Gotcha.
actually is another character I had created, Prince Valen. So
Okay.
Rivner's been off as an apprentice and he comes back with this other guy. And I actually had set up Valen because I was thinking it would be like more like this romance kind
Yeah.
of, and that he was gonna actually fall in love with Jana because he's the super staid, very peaceful, non-emotional kind of guy who's,
Yeah.
yeah, stoic, and that
Yeah.
that they were going to be the funny partners later on kind of thing.
Yeah, he won't work with a stoic character is not going to work with Jana. You could get a
Oh,
Rivner character to work with Jana,
uh,
but a stoic character isn't going to work. Like you could have a serious. So the type of character that'll work with Jana is it appears stoic, but it's a little different. It's the I wish I were like that character. A lot of times those characters are like incredible athletes who have been forced into a role
mhm.
because of their skill and don't know how to get out of it. So if you think about like the old romantic comedy, oh crap, I can see it's with Freddie Prinze Jr. I can see the poster on my fit on in my head. And it's a classic trope comedy where like
He's all that.
she's all that. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the character that falls for a Jana because he has that in him. He has the like, you know, playful, fun side. He's just suppressing it because it doesn't
gotcha.
fit in his world. A true stoic character who's unemotional is going to go for Clarina because
Okay.
they align in that way. Does that make sense? Like, that's the
Yeah.
stoic character is going to go for the sharp, cutting, grounded girl if he's truly stoic. So, like, if you want Valen to go for Jana, as opposed to describing him as unemotional, you need to describe him as like completely dutiful, right? Like
Guess
bound.
that's kind of what I was thinking, that like because of his position as the prince, he has to be this certain way, but it's not
Yeah,
really, you know what I mean? That so
yeah.
yeah, as
So
you
he's not
said,
stoic, he's suppressed.
yes. So he comes across very uh
Yeah.
in this
If
book you don't see it at all. He would just be suppressed the whole time.
Yeah, he's suppressed, he's talented. He's probably a little bit cocky.
Hmm.
Um, these characters are always a little cocky because they're really good at being who they are, even though they don't necessarily like it.
Yeah, and that's
But
how him and Rivner click because they're both really
yeah,
good.
they're both really
Yeah.
good. And then he has a longing. That's what makes these characters work with characters like a Jana is they have a deep brooding or longing that
Okay.
speaks to something under the surface. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they're going to be villains, whatever is under the surface never actually emerges. Or you dig under the surface and you're like, oh, what's under the surface is you're a narcissist. But if you want them to like, if you're, going kind of that YA romance trope,
Yeah.
yeah, this is the kind of, you want him to be cocky and it's a weird combination, but and kind.
Yes.
That's the,
Yeah, that's how I kind of envision. Like he's got a good heart, but it's kind of
yeah,
like
he's got a good heart.
nobody
Yeah.
really knows it because he's just sort of
And
not
in
showing.
in these characters' growth arcs, it's always the cockiness that goes away.
Okay.
Right? Like if you're gonna grow this character from like if you're gonna like design an arc around this character where you're like, okay, he starts here and then he ends here, just like I did with Allie, where I'm like, okay, it's her duty boundness and lack of confidence that's gonna change. For him, it's going to be the cockiness. You're going to lose that cockiness.
Got it.
And
Yeah.
the cockiness is probably going to be replaced by like a thoughtfulness. And then he's a good mix for Jana.
Yeah.
Yeah. How does it, let's get to this story though, because that's a good like future arc.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
no, that's great. It's good.
I'm trying
Whenever
to make
you're,
sure my cast, he's flattened this one. So,
yeah, whenever you're writing characters, for what you think of like, especially like a YA fantasy, what you're doing is good. You're like prepping it for future books, right?
right.
Like the best thing Bridgerton did in their romance series was they prepped it. She has a bunch of sisters and brothers.
Right. I'm a
So like,
huge fan of those books. I love the way she did that. I just
yeah,
think, oh my God, that's brilliant.
super smart because like, oh, if the first one works, now I just start marrying off everybody else. Like this is the
Yes.
like
And
now
then
we're
we get
just
to
gonna
the
go.
cousins and
Yeah,
the,
we just keep going through the family. So
yeah.
this is yeah, so Valen, in this one he's kind of flat. I'm gonna recommend you make him a hazard character.
Okay.
So can he be super hot?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, they're elves. They're all hot, but yeah, he'll be super
Well,
hot.
he needs to be the hottest of the hot.
Got it. He's the hottest. Oh, and I forgot, I didn't know if you saw, I also made a queen of the dryads, and I was thinking of her as a hazard character also.
Oh, great. Okay, let's do her next.
Okay.
Well, we can do her at the same time. So the
Okay.
thing about hazard characters is they only show up occasionally, and something about them needs to be exaggerated to force your cast to respond to them. So if he's the hottest of the hot elf, that gives Clarina and Jana and Allie a reason to notice him and have to respond to him. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I only say I'm only using hotness because you are in this like the struggle Allie has is should I or should I not be a wife?
Right.
So
Yeah.
like you have a romance struggle underneath. It doesn't have to be a romance book and that there's a romance plot or anything like that, but that question is always lurking in the
Right.
background. So it's good. It's an easy thing to be like, yeah, it's super hot. Okay, so you had a queen.
Yes. On her last quest that Martell sends her on is to find the Pearl of Truth, which is how she gets revealed because it has
Okay.
power to reveal, see through her glamour. And but the Queen of the Dryads, I kind of envision her as she's an example of female power.
Okay.
And that's who Allie sees in that last quest as, challenging her on why would you not stand up? I don't know. I haven't quite figured out what she's
Yeah,
gonna
so that's more a
but
kind of like a final anchor engine mentor than a hazard.
is it okay?
Yeah,
Well,
you don't want her
what
to
would a hazard?
represent. Yeah, you don't want her to represent when you're looking at a hazard, you want something that's like so outside of who your character is
Right,
that it really drives your character to make decisions. So like the reason hotness works with Valen is because he forces a completely different conversation on Allie. Allie's working to become this thing, and here comes Valen, and now she has to talk about hot guy. And just to decide whether or not she's willing to talk about hot guy, right? Like that's the thing is that it it's something that Jana and uh
Clarion.
Clarion, I think you are going to talk about is how does now Allie has to decide, am I going to do this or am I not going to do this? Does that make sense?
Right,
In that decision, she's making a choice about who she is, but
right.
he is not, he forces the swerve. He doesn't encourage her one way or the other.
Got it. Yeah,
Does that make sense?
it
So
does.
she can be power, right? She can be threatening, dangerous, um, overwhelming can be another like way that you describe her. Um,
Okay.
you can make her power personified. Just as you're talking about her, even female power personified, don't have Allie it's not a question of like, is Allie going to be like her? The question that a Hazard character needs to pose to Allie um, is it worth it? Is
Mm,
it worth it to risk everything? So if you're going to make her power, the reason she's a hazard is because she causes such a great risk for Allie.
what do you mean a risk?
She
What kind
poses the risk of failure, the risk of like, maybe I can't do this.
of,
Maybe
okay,
this obstacle, this barrier, this hazard
right,
is too much.
got it. Yeah,
Does that make sense?
it does.
She's not somebody out. You can't have her be somebody Allie wants to emulate.
No, I think she scares the bejeepers out of her,
She scares the
honestly.
crap out of her and forces Allie to decide whether or not she's just gonna go. She's gonna give it all up now and go back to being a
Right.
princess
Okay.
because I don't know how I'm gonna get past this hazard. Right, like that's how you kind of got to think about her. Is like this is such a big force. So if you're writing that in her voice, a good fantasy representation of that, not in the book, but definitely in the movies, is Glorindria in the Lord of the Rings movies.
Yeah,
He doesn't
that's
really.
actually how I kind of envisioned her.
Okay,
Like, yes,
yeah,
that's exactly. I
yeah,
didn't remember the name either.
yeah. She's a great Hazard character. She's not. She's not really in the books, but she's a great Hazard character in the movies because she is this. She is stoic. She is unemotional. She is just raw power. And there's a moment in that movie where Frodo offers her the ring, right? She's so powerful. She forces him to choose a direction. And in his gut instinct is to be like, I won't be this person that I'm supposed to become. You take it. You be the person, right? And she like in the movie she freaks out at him. And he's like, "Oh, I chose wrong." And so he like takes it back. He's like, "All right." So but
Yeah.
that's early in his journey, right? Like later in his, if you're putting this queen later in the journey, you want her to be somebody that Allie has to defeat to move forward.
Okay.
Does that make
That makes
sense?
sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. I think that'll totally work.
Yeah. Because we're later in the journey. If you put her up here, then she kind of starts to send Allie back to maybe I should go home. And then you need like a kip to be like, no, we can do it. Let's move forward.
Yeah, no, she's at the end, and
Yeah.
I
So if you
think
put her
her challenge
here,
is you have to go through this whatever and get the pearl. So that's like
yeah.
she's captured him, she's gonna kill him, and she's like, unless you can do this,
Yeah.
and that's the challenge, kind of.
And so you want her to have kind of like a who do you think you are attitude.
Okay,
Who do you think you are? Who are you to do this? You want her reminding Allie of who Allie's supposed to be, right?
right.
You're nothing. Your job is to get married and to have children. Go home, little girl. Right? Like that's kind of
Oh,
her,
it's so great. Yes.
yeah, that's kind of where you want her language to be.
Right.
Um, okay, which one? We got two left. Which one do you want to do next?
Let's do Martell.
Okay. Martell's pretty, he's a mentor.
Yes.
What are you thinking for him, personality wise? How would you
He's
describe him?
he's grizzled. He's tough on the outside and got a good heart on the inside. He's seen a lot of battles, so he's more, I guess, he sees the value of life, and so he's kind of yes, compassionate. That's how, I
Yeah.
guess that's a good word to put it.
Why is he attracted to Allie?
He, I guess, because he sees the potential in her to be more than she is, and that's what he sees, her awkwardness, and I don't know if it's fatherly instinct or what, but it's kind of like, all right, well, let's see if we can do something with what, whatever.
Yeah, you need so the kind of trope you're hitting around is great for an engine, by the way, for especially for a mentor character. is the kind of grumpy grandfather.
Yeah.
To everyone else, he is grumpy and grizzled and a little mean. But something about Allie just melts his heart.
Right.
And that's kind of who you're describing is the like, so you'll want a voice modulation when they're alone.
Do you think that's okay? Have I laid too
Mhm.
many different
No, not at
um
all.
okay.
Yeah, no, it's
That's all
great.
right. I was just okay.
Yeah, no, it's great. And he's the kind of you want him to show up in key moments early in the story. Um, to encourage her. By the time she's on her journey, he's going to be less important.
Right.
He's the one that needs to encourage her to go and try, to go and do. You might bring him back at the end in the Dark Night of the Soul. He's a good one to find her in the Dark Night of the Soul, if it's possible in the plot to do that, if it makes sense
Yeah.
in the plot to do that, and be like, hey, it's going to be okay. We always knew this would be hard, but you can do it. Like that's where you want him showing up. You are going to have to write some scenes early in the book, like world before in the book, where we see him as grizzled and grumpy toward Jana and Clarina and
Okay.
Allie. Allie's got to be there too, but he kind of needs to bark at Jana and Clarina. He needs to yell at them to get out of here. They need to
Yeah.
run off, and then we need a scene with him and Allie where he's kind of encouraging. And then you'll want another scene. That's going to set him up as a character. Does that make sense? Like that's his establishing scene. And then you want a scene later where Allie is pondering whether or not she should use the glamour. It's kind of the debate around the inciting incident before the journey begins. You
Uh-huh.
want her kind of pondering that. He's the one that needs to show up and be like, I think you should do it. I think you should.
Well, that works great. That's awesome.
Yeah. But you have to establish him first. You have to like, I think a lot of times with these mentor characters, that's the mistake we make is we just bring them in as the mentor and the reader doesn't care about them because we haven't established them. So you have to
Right.
establish them first, his persona and who he is. And then it's more meaningful when he tells her you should go and do it. But then we don't necessarily need him again until she's at a low point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Got it.
Does that
Yeah.
work?
Yes. He's a
Okay.
bit of a plot device, and that's why that helps a lot because
Yeah,
I
and
to
yeah,
send off on missions or what, he kind of trains them off on these missions where like to the Queen of the Dryads or whatever. But
yeah. And to
yeah.
help him not feel like a plot device, make
Yeah.
him personable by giving him a scene or two scenes where he's just interacting with them in kind of a fun way.
Cool. That helps a
Yeah.
lot. That's like it's so mechanical that can't be good.
No, it's fine. The mechanicalness of it, like readers want the expected but surprising. So they like the mechanic. They don't want to see the mechanics,
Uh-huh.
but they like the mechanics to be there. So they don't want to be able to point to him and be like, oh, he's just going to show up when good things happen. So that's why you kind of have to like hide him in a couple other scenes. Right? Like
Got
you
it.
kind of like,
Hide him in plain sight. Yes.
yeah, hide him in plain sight and then use him when you need him. Right? Like,
Got
and that's yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, talk to me about Gwenna.
So Gwenna, I don't even know if I really need Gwenna. She was a holdover from the original love story and that she was going to be kind of a rival for Rivner's affection. I still kind of envision her that way because part of Rivner's arrogance is, he doesn't want to get close to any noble women. So he just kind of flirts with everybody. And that's what drives Allie crazy at the beginning too. His attitude, his arrogance, his. And this Gwenna was her childhood rival. Like they
Gotcha.
butted heads. So that's where it kind of adds a little salt into Allie's. And she kind of, Rivner doesn't know who she is when they're together. So
Gotcha. Okay. So
It adds some tension, I guess, but
have
I
you
don't
thought about her personality at all?
know. She's
Okay.
kind of like the last.
Okay. I would recommend you bring her into this book to potentially use later.
Mhm.
If you decide to write future books, I'd pull her in, but I would use her kind of like you're using Martell as the mentor. Use her as the other side of that. So she needs, because what you don't have right now is a character that's excited about her role in culture.
Right. Gwen is definitely that. And that's what
Yeah,
drives Allie crazy.
yeah.
Just
So she needs to be two-faced,
mm.
sweet on the outside,
Hmm.
but to Allie, just like you have Martell being a little two-faced, right? He's
Yeah.
grumpy on
Oh
the
yeah.
outside, but he's compassionate on the inside. You want to
Right.
flip her. She's sweet on the outside, but to Allie, she's a bitch.
Yes.
Um, so and she's very, you always want this character to be super competitive and you want her to be entitled,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Like, so, and that's a voice you don't have yet. You don't have the like entitled competitive, sweet
The
to
mean
all of the
girl.
adults. Yeah,
Yeah.
she is the queen mean girl. If you keep this book going past this one and you don't redeem Clarina probably ends up with Gwenna in the
Right.
next book. Like they're probably suddenly buds. Um,
Yeah. I could
yeah,
see that. Yeah.
yeah. If you don't redeem Clarina. So you've got another kind of hazard character here, kind of verges toward Anchor. She kind of resembles Martell. But once we get on the quest, you're going to lose her. Does that make
Right.
sense? In the
Yeah.
same way that you'll lose Martell on the quest, right?
Yeah.
Like they kind of come in early, they add weight to the inciting incident, and then they're just going to kind of fade into the background because they're not so important
Right.
once Allie started her journey.
Oh, you know what? I forgot there's one other dude, but
Oh,
I
who's that?
guess it's the Jeffrey. He's the creepy suitor that her dad's trying to set her up with. 'Cause you
Yeah,
just
he's a hazard.
he's
Yeah,
the beginning.
yeah, yeah.
That's the as is world before this starts, where
Yeah, and make him as
you
as
see him very little, just
creepy.
the beginning.
Yeah, he needs to be as creepy as possible. He's your opening hazard that really forces her to swerve a little bit, and he
Right.
needs to be so creepy it hurts.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, how do you feel about the cast?
I think very excited. That's
Awesome.
very helpful. Thank you
Good.
so
I'm
much.
really glad. Um, you have a great, there's a lot of potential there. It's a really good, yeah, it's a really good, and it's fantasy. Um, I can't remember. Did you say YA or not
Yeah,
YA?
it's definitely YA. They're
Yeah,
that
this is the
teenager.
perfect.
So that's why you hit the nail on the head that they're
Yeah,
gonna have girl talk and
yeah, it's the perfect fantasy YA cast. You've got the group of friends who have grown up together, and Allie's kind of the glue, but Allie's moving into her, like it's a coming of age. She's
yes,
moving into her new found self, discovering the power that she has. And she's going to have to say goodbye to her old friends, which is why they're all anchors, and
right.
say hello to Kip and this new life around Rivner, and really who she is. And it's a solid, you've got all the right pieces. You've got enough anchors in there that they will push back on Kip. And Rivner is a prototype that she's modeling, but he's not a like encourager who's going to put his arm around her. So you've got a
Yeah.
good amount of, yeah. Yeah, it is going to be hard for you. The problem with YA stories is that they're so saturated with romance. Once you start talking about high school students, the question is always like, who's going to date who? So
I know, and that's
Yeah.
kind of how I started, but then I kind of wanted to pull back because I really wanted to be about her coming into her power,
I would.
step.
Yeah, I wouldn't make it because it would be very easy to drift into she comes into her power because she's in love with Kip. And that's not what you want to do.
Not at
Keep
all.
keep him as big brotherly as possible. In
Okay.
fact, you may want to make him attracted to Clarina. Like you may want to give him someone to be attracted to.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
don't want the romance to kind of come to, I don't want it as a romance at the end that she's off with a guy,
Yeah, that's not
not
what you
at all.
want. Yeah, so you need to give Kip a distraction. A lot of
Okay.
times in these kind of casts, Kip will be gay
Oh,
because it
okay.
takes him off the table, right? Like,
Right. Well, that makes sense.
yeah, it takes him off the table of, can she date Kip someday? Um, so it's that kind of like, yeah, but that's just another way to do it. Like it's not, you don't have to go that way. It's just a possibility. Um, So yeah, I would either give him somebody that he's like, give a female character that he's attracted to. Doesn't even need to be one of the friends. It can just be like somebody who walks by every once in a while, and he's like, "Whoo, yeah, that's the one
I
right there."
got you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just so Allie knows
So
he's
Allie knows we're not dating.
no.
If
Right.
somebody asks, she needs to be like, "Ew, he's like my brother." Like it's that kind of, you want to develop
Right.
that kind of
Yes.
relationship between them. But the way you do that is you give him an attraction to somebody else, to pull him off of the romance table so that he can continue to encourage her, but she's not attracted to that encouragement.
Got it.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, that changes a little bit how I envision them at the end, where, it changes his motivations about, he was sent as a kind of a spy and his whatever. And so he gets conflicted as he
Yeah.
cares about Allie.
You can totally do that at the end. You'd have to head hop into his head to pull that off. I would
Yeah.
probably save that for book two.
Okay. That makes
Because
sense.
you'd have to get, and a lot of times in these kinds of series, book one you're in one person's head, and book two you start experiencing more of the characters. So
Yeah.
that's kind of like the Percy Jackson series is the classic template
Oh,
for
I
that.
love that. Yep.
Yeah, in book one, you're just in Percy's head. By book four, you're like
Like I'm
Nico's head,
Portugal.
Annabeth's head, Grover's head, Percy's head. Like you're just like, you're all over the map. You're like, I can't even
Right.
track whose head I'm in anymore. But yeah,
Yeah.
so he has to start putting the names of the characters at the top of the
As
chapter.
every
He's like,
title.
now
Yeah.
we're in Annabeth's head. Yeah, so it's that. But that's how these books tend to expand. You start with one character and then you blow up into the other.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
characters. Yeah. All right. I'll hit stop and we can talk a little bit more.
Thank you.